welcome to my channel. Welcome back. Welcome if you're new. I'm so happy to have you here. Today we're doing a really fun tag that I've seen go around for a while now, and I've been putting some thought into what I wanted to share with you all, and that is collections meet decks. And this was started by Candy, Soul, and Soil, and I just wanted to hop in and bring forward some other things that I collect. I had a hard time choosing what, I guess, area or topic to choose because I collect a couple other things. But ultimately, I thought it would be really cool to showcase some of my completed journals that I've kept throughout the years and how they relate to some of my decks. I also collect blank journals. I don't know if collecting is the right word, but I accumulate a lot of journals because I like to use them. But I thought it would be maybe a little bit more interesting to share the ones that I have used. So let's just hop right in. I have 7 journals to share with you today. The first journal I have here is one from my childhood, and this is a journal that I kept with my best friend at the time, Caitlin. Oh gosh, I can't even tell you. We must have been 12, maybe 11, 10 to 12 in that range. I found this old Steno notebook in my dad's office, and so I took it and I would write an entry, she would write an entry, and we would exchange it back and forth. And perhaps if you can tell, this journal is centered on horses because Caitlin and her family had horses, and Vixen was one of the names, and I think Cowboy was another one of the horses that they had. As you can see, Caitlin and Hannah's journal of horses. This journal just, obviously, it reminds me of childhood. It reminds me of just, oh, this is from 2002. So let me think, how old was I in 2002? I was 10. I was 10 in 2002. This journal is kind of all over the place, as you can see, because it's a Steno. Writing it in order was not something that we did very well. This just reminds me of my childhood, of that nostalgic feeling of innocence and how we would go back and forth. I mean, I can't even believe that this was my handwriting at one time. It evolved so much since. But yeah, my friend Caitlin and I would exchange this notebook, and we would talk about horses. We would draw them. Yeah, it was a really good time. I am so glad that I still have this. Me and Caitlin, we went our separate ways. I mean, as we grew up and went even into high school. So we haven't been close friends for a long while, but we're connected on Facebook, so we can see each other's lives as they evolve, I guess. So the deck that I'm going to be sharing, and that feels like a nostalgic deck, we perused one of the antique shops there, and I came across this deck. I paid $4.50, vintage round playing cards. I gotta tell you that the cards were like a huge hit. Me and all my cousins played with these a lot during that trip, and we hadn't been all together like that in a very long time. And in fact, I don't think we have really been together like that since we would play Crazy Eights. We tried to learn and play euchre. Of course, we did classic Go Fish. So this is a very nostalgic deck for me, and it reminds me of, regular playing cards, which I did play with a lot as a kid, trying to stack them, seeing how tall you could get it, playing Go Fish with my mom and my sister, just all those fun vibes. And it's cute. I like the backs. So that is my nostalgic pick. The next journal that I have here is one that I used as a teenager. This journal I acquired because my grandmother had received a box set of journals. I think they were different sizes, and this is one of them. It's cloth bound. It's really beautiful. Teenage me kind of dinged it up, but it is well loved and well used. And as a teenager, in my angst years, I guess, I used this as a poetry book / I was trying to write some songs, which is just too funny to look back on now. It was how I deeply felt at the time. It is raw and it is real. When I think of a deck that is raw and real and poetic, I think of the Black Lily Tarot. And the reason I think of this deck is because the figures in this deck are unapologetically themselves. They are raw and they are real, and they are bared down to exactly who they are. There's no masks with them. It's just exactly who they are. I use this deck when I'm feeling most disconnected disconnected from my own body and my own confidence and self-image issues that I may have or that may come forward. And this really brings me back to a time where I didn't care what others thought. I was me, whether or not it was corny or not, or what have you. I was unapologetically myself. And this brings me back to a space like that. And it helps me to reset, and it helps me to work through those moments of low self-esteem that I may be having at that time. That is why I chose the Black Lily Tarot to represent my most poetic deck. The next journal I have here was a gift from my mom at some point in my life. I do have many other journals that my mom has gifted me since, but she inscribed it here. August 2015 is when she gifted it to me from mom. It reminds me of her, and this was the first journal where I was really playing with collaging, including stickers and washi tape. I was still trying to figure out my style, I think, but it's the first one that I really experimented with, and it makes me happy, and it makes me think of my mom and that she really helped perpetuate this love of collage by gifting me this journal. So two decks that reminded me of my mom are Spirit Cats and the Fountain Tarot. We'll start with Spirit Cats. The reason I picked this is very straightforward. My mom is an animal lover. She has cats. I have cats, so it's like a connecting point between us. And it is soft watercolors. These cats are really adorable. They're very gentle. They have really nice messages on the back here. I like how it's written. My mom is also a good writer as well, so I feel like it touches on a few points of why it reminds me of my mom. And then the Fountain Tarot, it might, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people think that this deck is cold and standoffish. However, I have used this deck a lot. It feels mature. It feels like it is guiding you. I love that the Empress is right here on the top because the Empress is my mom to me. My mom is warm and inviting and intelligent, and she's very motherly, and she's very logical at the same time. And this deck is not cold or standoffish at all for me. It is one that I go to because I'm familiar with it. It feels comforting. I love all the colors. I like how it makes me think in new ways. And when I talk to my mom, just reminds me of those conversations that we have. She makes me think about things in new ways. And it's not even like she's sitting down and having like a serious chat with me. It's just how she words things and how she talks. It really brings a calming effect and energy to my life. And the Fountain Tarot has been that for me as well. It's very calming. I find it very comforting. I find this a deck that I am pretty close to as far as a bond. It's a pretty strong bond, despite what others might say. I also wanted to add a caveat that just because others experience a certain deck a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that you will also experience that deck in the same way. Because like I said, a lot of people find this to be very cold and very astute and kind of untouchable in a way, like it doesn't warm up to them. But for me, it's the complete opposite. I feel very warmed by this deck. I feel very nurtured by this deck. And all of those wonderful attributes remind me of my wonderful mom. The next journal I have here is this quill and ink, and little did I know that I would eventually, much later after this journal, end up really diving into fountain pens and ink. But I chose this journal to feature because it's really the first journal where I stuffed it. I was experimenting with different ways to add entries into a journal other than just writing on the page. I was adding things that appealed to me, and I really poured my heart and soul out into this journal. 2019. That was so long ago. And this journal really reminds me of my passion for writing, that fire that burns in me. So for this prompt, I am matching a deck that speaks to my passion, to my fire, similarly to the way that I feel about writing. And that deck is the White Newman Tarot. This deck is very fiery for me. It always has been from right out of the box. It reminds me of youth, but in a matured way. The facial expressions, I think, think really bring forward a sense of fire. The part of fire that's like, I don't give a shit, kind of. The way that the art is and that the colors are super vibrant, and the messages that I get out of this deck are super fiery and full of passion. I never walk away from this deck not knowing what it's trying to say, because it always has a lot to say to me. And I think that when you are passionate, like truly passionate about something, you can't quite shut up about it, right? It excites you so much that you must be talking about it. You must be sharing it at all times. So this is a reason why I've chosen this deck to represent what my passion looks like, what it feels like. The sun alone here, I don't know, it just gives off that energy for me. The next journal I have to share with you today is my very first and true attempt of collaging. This is where I was fully experimental, and I use magazine pages and images and clippings to do my collaging, and that's still true to this day. This was such a fun journal to do because there are literally no rules. I could put what I was feeling on the page in a visual way versus writing it by hand, and I think that is a completely different outlet than writing. I had a lot of fun with this, experimenting a lot and trying to figure out like what's too much, what's too little, what do I like? Not so much creating it to please others' eyes. This is one of my personal favorite pages. Kind of hits you in the gut. Yeah, my very first collage deck. So to represent this is my most favorite collage deck at the moment, and that is my Wilderness Collide Oracle. I believe this is analog collage, maybe with some digital touch somewhere along the line. This is out of print. I came across it, I think, on Etsy, and I'd never heard of it. I had never seen it before. But what I really like about this is it is kind of more on the minimal side of collage. Like, everything has its place and space, but it's, I don't know, it's just done really well. Like, instead of having grass here, these flowers are the grass. The crystals here are the mountains. We have a cactus for a tree and a palm tree. This bird is a lot larger than this girl here in the foreground, where this should be probably smaller. So there are a lot of choices here and a lot of layering that I really enjoy about this deck. It gives me a lot of space to take the meaning and really sit on it and think on it. This is one of my favorite cards. I like the red, and her hair is red. I don't know, I'm really liking it. It gives me enough room to go off my intuition, but I can look at the meanings in the PDF if I want to. I don't know. It's just a really nice, pretty collage deck. And I admire those who are able to do a more minimalistic style of collage, because that's just not me. As you saw there, I think once in a while I really hit it on the head with the minimalism, but it takes a lot more effort, honestly, for me to do that than to do a collage that has a lot more going on. So that is the Wilderness Collide for my favorite collage deck. The next journal I have here is my very first book journal. I had been wanting to keep a book journal for a long time, and this is my first attempt at doing so. It was my very first one, and I'm quite proud of it. I stuck to it. This has a couple years here. This is just a Moleskine notebook that was Game of Thrones themed, with Jon Snow here and his wolf. This was my very first, I've been reading books forever and a day, but I wasn't really tracking anything. And then I came across Goodreads, I think, in college. And so I was using that for a while, but I really missed having a place to journal out by hand my thoughts about a book. And so I decided I would try this. I was watching a lot of BookTube that featured a lot of these challenges, such as Book Bingo and the A to Z challenge, just trying to make it super fun. So that is my very first book journal. And the deck for this prompt is the deck that has a really outstanding guidebook. And I have a lot of decks that I could have chosen, but I really haven't specifically talked about this guidebook as far as it being one of my favorites on this channel. It has been featured a little bit because it is the Love Oracle of Eden guidebook, and the Love Oracle of Eden cards is what I use for my monthly pulls. So the energy of the month, the message of the month, and I do that in my monthly wrap-ups and the next month's intentions. I just always walk away from reading that like completely in awe. So the structure of this book is it has like this first little paragraph section is what I would call the keywords, because they are short clipped little sentences that start with to blah blah blah, to something, right? So for harmony, to encourage balance and peace in one's life and relationships. Individuality, to encourage the active embrace of others, to honor individual needs, to be true to one's own self. So it's like the keyword part of the entry. The second paragraph often talks about the imagery of the card, which I really enjoy, and I love that perspective in this guidebook. I do appreciate that this guidebook includes a description of what's going on in the cards, because the artist might see it one way and us reading the cards might see it a different way. So I like to know what the artist had intended. And then the last paragraph is what I would call the message of the card. A sweet, short, concise message, but it often asks or presents a bigger outward thinking question. It poses that. And then it includes a little mantra here. I am open to connecting with and becoming close to others on a deep and intimate level. I just think it's packaged really nicely. It is in that rose petal finish. It's a really lovely size, and everything inside of it gives you just enough or even more to make you think on things, to make your mind ponder. And that's really what I want. Sometimes I don't always want a like one and done reading. I want the meaning to stick with me for a while after I've completed the reading. And this guidebook helps to take my mind there. The last journal I have to share with you today is this one, and I had a really fantastic time filling this journal out. It's one of my most favorite and most loved journals. I love this paper. It's this craft paper that when I was in the middle of this journal, I went back to Barnes & Noble because that's where I found it. And I tried to find this journal or another one in this like craft paper series, and I couldn't find it. I also liked the binding in the back because it allowed it to lay flat, which is super important when journaling, at least for me, but I couldn't find it, and I haven't been able to find anything like it since. And the paper experience, when you are a writer, the paper experience can really be a game changer. It can take just a normal journal that you have and turn it into your favorite. The experience is just so lovely that I seek to find more journals like this to this day because of the experience I had writing in it. To match the journal, I have prompted my favorite cardstock. And I had to think about this prompt the longest because I am not really a cardstock snob. I will work with any kind of cardstock no matter what, but I do have a favorite, and that is within the Goblins and Gardens Tarot deck. This deck brings two of my most favorite cardstock features into one. The first is linen is probably my favorite texture cardstock. With matte, it's usually, there isn't a texture on it, it's just flat and smooth. Rose petal has that soft touch that has a little, maybe slightly little bit of stickiness to it. Gloss has a nice movement to it, and it's very smooth and it glides on your fingers very lovely. But linen gives that texture that just, it makes it feel upscale. I don't know how to better like describe it than it makes it feel more luxurious than just a smooth plain cardstock. The second part of this cardstock that makes it a favorite is it is a glossy linen cardstock, and gloss cardstock is a favorite of mine. I love the way it feels. I love the way that it handles and shuffles. I love the way that it makes colors pop and it enhances them. Sometimes I think like a good example, thank you deck, is in darker cards, sometimes a matte cardstock or another type of cardstock can make the card image feel very flat and very two-dimensional. But when you add a gloss on that, I can see it a lot better. There's a little bit more dimension to it. It comes to life in a different way. So for those two reasons, the fact that this is glossy and it's linen is my ideal, perfect cardstock. I love it so much. Linen typically is not the thickest of cardstocks. It is on the thinner side, but what linen does and what the texture does is it really strengthens the durability of the card, and linen is in for the long haul. It is a workhorse kind of cardstock, and I really enjoy that too. There's durability here, so it kind of hits all of the points that if I were creating my own deck, or if I had to say that I really cared about cardstock, this is exactly what I would describe. It's exactly what I would want. It moves beautifully. I also really like the size of this. Let me see, I have my Morgan Greer here for comparison. The Goblins and Gardens is kind of more, I wouldn't say fully oracle sized, but it is closer to oracle size than tarot. It's a little bit wider, but it's the same length here. And I really like that. I really like the size of this deck because I can riffle shuffle it this way, as you saw, or I could do it from the side. There's a lot of option and choice with this one. Yeah, love it so much. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing my life a little bit in its trajectory with the journals, ones I've had since childhood and ones that I've had more recently. I really enjoyed sharing this part of my life with you. Journaling is a huge part of my life, and it always has been. So I'm really happy that I could share that part of me with you guys and how it relates to some of my tarot decks. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to stay a while. We have a lot of fun over here. Leave a comment below on what do you collect? What do you like to collect? Do you collect more than one thing? I feel like those of us who do collect tend to have a bunch of different types of collections, so let me know what else you collect in the comments below. And until next time, see you around.